It would probably be nice to never have the pain of burning my hand on a hot stove or kettle again. But then again, it'd probably be the worst thing for me. And the reason I say that is because of this. Well, when you learn about congenital insensitivity to pain. Have you ever heard of that before? It's this condition where you can't really detect physical pain. You don't really get the signals. And there's that little moment when you first hear about it thinking that would be so useful, but then you're forced to reflect on what pain really is. And that's what we're going to be talking today about, why pain is not bad. It's just unpleasant. Welcome back, everyone, to the With Joe Wehbe Podcast. Let's get into it. So I thought about this a couple of months ago for the first time, how the role pain plays is a warning system, basically. It gives us feedback to our brain. And we're wired as people, again, with all these podcast episodes, the first stream is about how we're wired. We're wired to be a bit more sensitive to pain than we are to pleasure as a motivator, right? You'll avoid pain with more energy and tenacity than you will seek pleasure, which is why so many people don't take risks that logically make sense. We're going to circle back to that. When I burn my hand, it sends a signal that kettles are hot. Right? Now, if I didn't have the pain sensation and I left my hand on the kettle, it would burn the skin on my hand, which would be a negative outcome for my health and my interest in this life to enjoy and use my body and not suffer infection and burns. So the pain is actually, in some senses, a real gift. It motivates us to do the things that are in the best interest of our survival. In theory, pain is a warning system. Now, the people who don't have the sensitivity to pain, that congenital insensitivity, don't get those warning cues. So they can be doing something that's very dangerous for them, but they never understand that it's happening. And it's dangerous to not get the signal, to not get the learning. So pain, we learn, when we look at this and explore this, pain is a really important learning tool. Pain is probably the best teacher. It teaches us more than pleasurable stuff. And it's a very, wide-ranging idea. When you think about even Pavlov's dogs, not Pavlov's dogs, but the experience where they shock animals and test the association between a noise like a bell and electric shock. It gets encoded with great strength. And there's a line by Ray Dalio in his book Principles, which is that pain was, for him, a signal that he has something to learn. It's an indication of learning to come. So it's a really, really obviously powerful and central idea. So that's where we arrive at this idea of pain is not bad and that it is unpleasant. So when I break this down, I kind of have an equation that pain equals learning plus unpleasant experience. The learning is attached to this Trojan horse of an unpleasant experience so that it can be delivered to us. The unpleasant experience is the delivery mechanism, whereas the learning is the thing we really need. Now, it's hard to actually get the same learning without the unpleasant experience attached to it. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, the avoiding the unpleasant in the next episode of the podcast. But for now, I think this is the important reflection to kind of take. So there's not just physical pain, obviously, because physical pain is more of a black and white concept for its relevance in our lives. The much more difficult pain is a lot more emotional and psychological that we kind of experience in our lives. That's the real fog and the real cloud that creates darkness in the room. It stops us from seeing or opening the doors that lead out. So what I'm making a case for here is basically reconceptualizing pain and its role and how we actually appreciate it, not enjoy it, certainly not enjoy it, but appreciate it for its role rather than condemning it and thinking of it as this bad thing. It's this unpleasant experience which is meant to deliver learning. In some ways, the most difficult pain is probably that to do with opportunity cost. So if you don't understand the concept of opportunity cost is basically the opportunities we pass up when we do make an allocation or a decision. So metaphorically, it's opportunity cost is the doors we don't open because of the door we did open, because we can't go through more than one at a time. To use the bucket metaphor, which we've weaved in some of the earlier episodes just before this, it's the shells that don't make it or the things that don't make it into your bucket because the things that do. All right? What's it at the expense of? If you start a psychology degree, it's probably at the expense of doing an engineering degree. All right? So there's opportunity cost of all the other things you could have been doing with your time. The difficult thing with opportunity cost, which is painful, when you look back and think of, I'm sure I am like everyone else, when you look back and think about what you could have spent the last years doing, there's probably a lot of things you could have done better, right? And it's kind of painful, right? Regret is a very powerful form of pain. The challenge is, at the time when we're not aware of it, it's kind of like having congenital insensitivity. It's kind of like not being able to detect the pain signal, right? You're making all these mistakes that are dangerous and they're blunders and you can't really go back on them because you can't detect them. That's why it's very important to educate ourselves on opportunity cost, because we're not wired to sense it. From an evolutionary perspective, what's the opportunity cost? If you were designing a Homo sapiens brain with limited resources, right, for people living as cavemen or in tribes, why would you need to program something for opportunity cost? You just need them to eat and have sex with one another and survive as long as possible. It gives them the most opportunity to do that. You just need them to be afraid of all the threats and to seek to have pleasure, enough pleasure from eating and fornicating with one another. Not so much the opportunity cost, but that kind of evolves with the new, the prefrontal cortex needs to kind of get us up to speed with opportunity cost because of the world we live in now. So now it does become an important thing. So this is why opening doors for others is so important, especially doors of thinking, because these concepts that are integral to our lives, we have a very poor default understanding of. That's what I really push the 1,000 doors metaphor for specifically, is it's really helpful to help people understand that opportunity cost and the pain of not doing, and making that pain tangible. And that's the whole reason why I talk about when you turn down the first door, you're not just turning that down and not going in there, and that next room, you're stopping a journey of 1,000 doors that lie sequentially beyond that point. And so it makes the opportunity cost tangible. All right, that's an unpleasant idea to think about what we're missing out on. So there's opportunity cost is the most complicated form of pain probably in our lives. There's the emotional and psychological, which is our experiences, maybe romantic breakups, missing out on opportunities, things like that. But I wrote down that the reflection question, I guess, for today was to think about the most painful experience in your life so far that was likely so bad that you only experienced the unpleasant portion of it and didn't really unpack the learning or see the learning as clearly. And to just reflect on kind of what the learning really was. And it might be helpful, if you excuse me, I'm just going to double check here because I'll get us ready for the next episode as well. You might, actually I'll unpack some more of that in the next episode, but you just might want to reflect on that for now. So what was that painful experience? And what parts of it did you kind of not encode that were really learning when you take away the unpleasant part of the experience? I just find that a really helpful way to think about painful experiences. But I'm really excited for the next episode. We're going to go a lot deeper into this. So make sure you tune in again for that tomorrow. But for now, thank you. This has been the With Joe Wehbe podcast. And don't forget that the best way to open 1,000 doors for you is to concentrate on opening doors for others and hopefully help them avoid some opportunity cost and pain by educating them about pain. Well done, Joe. Okay, thanks. See you tomorrow.